Grand Rising, and welcome to Behind the Curtain with Ade and Ran. And welcome to today's guest, Sherinda Bryant. Grand Rising, Sherinda.
Grand Rising.
Grand Rising.
Hey.
Thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we were just saying beforehand that it was when you made that post about Afrofuturism. Immediately I thought I have to get in touch with you as a subject that I'm learning about as well. Mm-hmm. And to be able to talk about it on this forum will be another great learning experience.
Yes, for both of us. Mm-hmm.
I've got your bio here. I'm just going to read it out. Sherinda Bryant has served as an English and social justice educator for 12 plus years and has cultivated a passion for providing youth and adults with culturally restorative learning opportunities. She is the co-founder of the Redwood Learning Collective, a tutoring co-op and owner of the Afrofuturism Discovery Academy, a virtual hub for genre-related courses and professional development. She believes that curriculum should not only be informative, but it should challenge individuals to engage in their self-reflection and personal growth. She was selected as one of the California Teachers Association's 2019 Innovative Teachers for her integration of race, gender, and class issues into her English classes. Despite the controversy surrounding discussing these topics in class, she remains steadfast in her values. Her students increase emotional intelligence and ability to understand these topics while engaging in multicultural dialogue without causing harm, provides the evidence needed to continue. Thank you very much, Sherinda. Can you please, if you can embellish what you're doing at the moment?
Yes, so I've transitioned from the classroom setting into running my own business full-time. So currently I have some contracts with some community-based organizations to build curriculum, so various curriculum for different organizations. So one is a Black Family Collective here in the Bay Area. We call it Kukua Pamoja, which is Swahili for growing together. So we have some families that are gathering with their littles, and we're building curriculum to just encourage, African-centered education and just community, and all of the things that is really needed in our community. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Have you heard about this this new idea to make Kiswahili the language of the diaspora around the world?
Yes, that's a reason why I chose that language. I have a young man that's interested in teaching the littles a little bit about Kiswahili, and I just thought that was a very interesting idea. It's a beautiful language, and so I felt, yeah, if it's going to be kind of universal, and let's learn some more so we could be better global citizens.
Yeah, I thought it was actually an extraordinary idea. Imagine speaking from someone from the diaspora in Brazil or somewhere in Africa or in Europe, anywhere, and you can communicate in Kiswahili.
Yeah, right. How that would just bridge a lot of gaps. Yeah.
So how did you first become interested in Afrofuturism? So
my first glimpse at it was I attended a virtual conference. I forget the college that was putting on, but it was in Florida. And they were talking about Zora Neale Hurston. And some of the presenters brought in that aspect of Afrofuturism. There was a professor that was talking about how that relates to hip hop music and the innovation and connecting it back to history, and I was just like, wait, what is this? I was writing all the notes, and I just dove into a rabbit hole, started looking up all of the different aspects, and I don't know, it was just kind of a light bulb moment.
Mm.
I love music. I My first degree is in music and in business. So I'm a singer songwriter as well. So I love music. Um, I love history. I feel like I haven't gotten enough. I know that I haven't gotten enough education in my own history. Um, and I love this idea of future thinking or design thinking. And so
Mm.
it's Afrofuturism blends all of the things that I love, and I had been looking for something that would kind of, center me, as as they say, a multi hyphenated person. So I needed something to kind of bring my parts together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit more on um, the interest in future thinking? What
Mhm.
about it excites you?
It's well, first, I feel like we need some confidence to be restored before you can do future thinking.
Mm.
And so it's the idea that the imagination is powerful. And so in my experience in public school systems, I started to realize how much these structures of public school don't give students the opportunity to, really engage that creative and that imagination. I used to tell my freshmen that I asked them, "Do you have little brothers and sisters?" And yeah, do they ask you a lot of questions? And it's annoying. They're like, "Oh yeah," um, and I was like, "But that's genius at work." And somewhere along the line, we stop asking questions and we stop saying "what if," and we stop imagining what
Mm.
could be. And we could point fingers as to why that is, but it's I think it's a varied reason, but certainly I feel that school should be a place to expand on and not strip away imagination.
Yeah.
So future thinking is engaging your imagination and asking those questions, problem solving, thinking of a thing in a different way. Um, I used to always tell the kids also that creativity or creation is the highest form of intelligence. Not that you can read something and regurgitate information, like that's kind of basic. You know, I
Mm.
used to kind of tease kids and say monkeys can do that too. You know, so, and they're like, oh,
Mm.
but can you take what you have learned and repurpose it in a way, or create something that doesn't exist? That is a beautiful thing. And so we could use that power of our mind to solve many problems.
Yeah. And you sort of started talking about at a certain point we lose that um, we don't use that imagination, in the way that maybe we did. Actually, Ron and I were kind of talking about this yesterday. It seems like at a certain age, we stop thinking, we stop questioning, and we just do what we are told to do because what will make us fit in, what will give us the good grade, what will get us approval, and how do you how do you get someone back into using their imagination, and where maybe there's a little bit of fear now surrounding it because you're going out into this uncertainty?
Yeah, absolutely. It was always the creative projects, that my high academic students, essays, they got it. When I said we're doing a creative project, they have all the questions. Well, what do you want? How can I? Is this okay? You know, and I would always like, whatever is in your mind, to do is okay with me because it's your mind. So it was like a, a constant process that I had to reassure them, a lot of them, that it's okay. You know, that thought that you have, that design or whatever, is just okay to put out. I also would encourage them to, instead of write like formal notes, Cornell notes or something, or an outline, I would encourage them to just doodle their thoughts.
Mm.
And the result of that, were beautiful like collages of information that they had connected and they could explain. That was the point to me. Like, if you could explain what you did, then that's great. So I feel that we have to be intentional of trying to assure um, our young people that their creative mind is beautiful, and it doesn't have to fit into a certain box. Give them some space and freedom to do things as they wish. And then they'll build that confidence that, like, okay, this is pretty good. Let me try something. Let me take it a step further the next time.
Yeah.
I find this in the nursery class I teach, is that they're open and they're just spontaneously creative. They will try this, they will build the blocks. If we want to dance, we'll just dance and sing. But something happens a few years later when it comes in, that kind of something begins to stop them or impede them.
Mhm.
And they begin to lose that enthusiasm just to create. And they begin to start to compare what they're doing with other people.
Mhm. Agree.
And you kind of slowly see it creep into us. What do you think that is?
I mean, if I look at the development of young people, I feel like around about fourth and fifth grade, something shifts, and I don't know if that's you know a mental thing, or, and like, I can't pinpoint exactly the structures of school that shift, from third to sixth grade.
Mm.
But certainly before students enter middle school, something is different. Um, I I don't know if it has to do with certain not landmarks, but checkpoints that students have to, certain testing that happens at that age, or something that, there's something that they have to reach, and so that becomes like the focus. You gotta make sure that certain things. So maybe there's less time for creative play.
Mm.
You know, maybe.
Mm.
Yeah,
I
that's
remember doing a art project in school and doing some work, and then looking across at the person next to me and thinking their work is so far superior
Mm,
to what I'm doing. And I think that stayed with me for decades.
Hmm.
A long time. It took a long time to actually recognize that, because it's very easy to say, I'm no good at this, I can't do this, I can't do that. But when I look back on it, I think that was one of the pivotal moments where I made a decision, I think, maybe, that I wasn't good at this thing, just on that one comparison.
And how old were you?
I think I was 10 or 11 at the time.
Yeah. But how do you think you develop that notion of comparison? You know, like that you would look at something and develop that opinion, you know?
Yeah, I think maybe it came through, being graded or being tested, being given a mark for your work, and in school at the time, and a certain piece of work gave you a certain grade, and that grade meant you were good, and the grade I got wasn't good.
Okay.
So I think maybe just this early testing that we go through, and it really can destroy your confidence and just ability to just free play and go with it and go with your imagination. Because at the time, you could be a young person just drawing from your imagination, but maybe it's not what the class teacher's asking you to do.
Right.
So I guess as well, it's the class teacher as well. And of course, it's their training as well, what they've gone through and what they think is good or bad or so on.
Sure.
So maybe it's to rethink how we teach and our responses to work, and how we can encourage, and how easy it is to discourage as well. The simple words.
Yeah, and it seems also that a lot of it is absorbed through society, from our parents, from what we watch on TV, from the news, from all of the structures that are in place are teaching us compare, all the advertisements. It's all about competition. This is better than that. And school just sort of reinforces that way of thinking, as well. But you said something very interesting that at a certain point there's like we have to hit some milestones, whether it be certain testing or what have you. So there's this sense of schedules and times, and you don't have the space that is needed to explore and be creative. So that space is not provided. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of space to make mistakes and to ask questions and this sort of thing.
Yeah, and there's pressure, on both ends, on the teacher, on the educator, to ensure that the children meet certain standards before they go on, and then that pressure is felt on the student, and I feel that as the students who don't meet those standards at the given time, they'll continue to be behind, and then you get apathy that sets in, and a whole discouraged attitude, in middle school, and by the time they get to me in high school, it's a bad situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Addie and I were having just this exact conversation yesterday.
Last night.
Yeah, exact conversation. Because I don't know if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers.
No, I haven't yet.
he talks about it's called the Matthew effect. So once those who have will be given more. So for instance, if you see a child who is good at PE when they're age 4, they will be given more help and assistance than the other ones. And the more help they get, the better they get. And the more help they get, the better they get. So by 10 years later, this gap has grown. And it may not have been that they were superior at the age 4. Maybe they were just older. Because when you're 4 years of age, someone who's 4, who's going to be 5 in September, is a lot more developed mentally and physically than someone who's 5. Could be a year later, but they're in the same class. So just to look at how we make these early judgments. And I think I was guilty of that. I didn't understand it when I was working in schools.
So the idea that maybe we kind of hone in on ones that show a little interest or promise. And we're like, oh, okay, I'm going to pour in. And then that widens the gap from, and you didn't really ask the other one that maybe was a little quiet about their interest.
Yes.
And that widens the gap. I understand. Yeah.
Because I realized, because I was a PE teacher, and after reading the book, I looked at the ages of the members of my football team. And the majority in the UK, our cutoff date of the year is August 31st. And I looked at the dates of my football team, and the majority were September, October, November. Of course, when they're smaller, they're bigger, and they're the oldest ones in the year. So when I saw that, it just blew my mind. I had been oblivious to this.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really good book. Malcolm Gladwell talks about it a lot in his book, Outliers.
I have to get that. Yeah.
So going back to future thinking, and you had mentioned that before really the future thinking can take place, the child or person needs to have probably a certain level of confidence. And I think we're talking about how the system is sort of conditions you in a way where you don't have that so much, or maybe you don't have the support that helps to nourish that that confidence. What is it? What do you do with your students to help them to feel more confident in themselves?
Well, it depends on the crowd.
Yeah.
When I'm talking with, Black and Latinx or Polynesian students, I know that there's a disconnect from their history because it's not present. And to me, it's an identity issue when you're unable to make those sort of connections of kind of like lineage and legacy and history. And so without that kind of grounding information, then you're more susceptible to adapting identities from multimedia.
Yeah.
Like you're searching for who you are. Oh, I see this, Black people on TV. Maybe I'll be like them.
Yeah.
So then we have, all kinds of false identities. So so with that crowd, I need to kind of address that part first and kind of restore those identities, and which is why I say I'm trying to build restorative curriculum. Right now the buzzword is to be culturally responsive.
Hmm.
And so I was doing future thinking when I asked, well, what would it look like if I made restorative curriculum?
Mm.
And so there's that work to be done, um, by connecting them back to that legacy, that lineage. Whether that's more information, learning more information about their family, um, or beyond. To kind of see the cultural values and beliefs and accomplishments and innovations. Like you aren't just here, you know, as you know, you have a connection. You
Hmm.
have something that you're supposed to be connected to. So that is kind of my first step. Um, and then I would challenge them to apply, what they have learned. Give them opportunities. Like there's a company in Oakland. It's called Afrorythms, and so they have developed this card game where you get to choose. You choose some cards and some situations, and you try to come up with relics or obelisks, and um, in a world that you imagine. And so I love the idea of kind of gameplay, um, to kind of awaken that imagination.
Mm.
Um, so I kind of adapted a version of that. And I made my own little board, um, but I use it to ask some questions, and in the future, I'm going to use it to ask more specific questions about, the kind of, what kind of neighborhood would you like to live in, or
Mm.
what kind of school would you like to go to, and get them into little groups and let them design a,
Wow.
a place that they would want to be in, that
Yeah.
they feel they belong in.
Yeah, that's amazing. I yeah, just speaking from my own experience, as an artist, a creative person, I see that I did put a lot of limitations on myself.
Mm.
So like everything had to be done this way, the way that someone in the college taught me, and I was always comparing, like if I write a script, is it fitting into the way that other movies are, and so basically, what ends up happening is just me regurgitating
Mm.
something else, something that I've learned, and not really taking the risk to not even knowing, you know. A lot of it, I feel like, is about finding one's voice,
Yes.
and one's authenticity, and so it's really interesting that you're doing it through Afrofuturism, because it's such a powerful tool that I'm just learning about. But what in the like, is there any artists that have inspired you, like artists that, whether it's writers or um, filmmakers or films or anything, that you watched it and it just like uh, you know uh, it just inspired you?
Mm. Um, so, you know, Afrofuturism is, relatively newly coined. I think it was like in the late '90s. This man wrote an essay, Mark Derry, and It's called Black to the Future. And in it, he coined the term Afrofuturism. But, it's always been here. We just didn't know what to call it. We can go back, and, just in my lifetime, look, growing up and seeing, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and,
Mm.
the costumes and the album covers, and, like, it was interesting, Parliament and George Clinton, like mothership coming down, and it was like, what is, the people
Yeah.
were going wild,
Yeah.
and so they showed us, and they gave us the themes of, you know, uh, putting yourself into another world,
Mm.
where these social constraints, didn't exist. I'm recently learning more about Sun Ra,
Mhm.
and just how far out
Yeah. Yeah.
that he really was. But he's just so interesting to me because he's unapologetic.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna break all the rules. How about that? These jazz rules, gonna break those too. you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and it takes. I feel like it takes some real study to kind of dig through his music and his writing, and even that movie that he made, and
Uh,
to really like understand what he was trying to do. Even the statement that he made that he was abducted by aliens, and then they gave him a message to come back and teach his people. That
mm.
was the first thing. Like people were, I don't know about that guy. you know.
Yeah. I'm going to read a quote of his. Um, I'm not real. I'm just like you. You don't exist in this society. If you did, your people wouldn't be seeking equal rights. You're not real. If you were, you'd have some status among the nations of the world. So we are both myths. I do not come to you as a reality. I come to you as the myth because that is what Black people are, myths. I came from a dream that the Black man dreamed long ago. I'm actually a presence sent to you by your ancestors.
Hmm.
That's really, really powerful.
Yes.
Yeah. And it kind of I brought that up because you mentioned that the Afrofuturism brings you into another world.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
You know.
And when I thought about that idea of kind of what I said earlier about false identities,
Mhm.
and him saying that we are myths. I feel that pokes at that challenges that who we say we are, who we think that we are, may not be. We are a highly conditioned people, and it takes a lot of unlearning to really, connect back, to the traditions and values of motherland. And so I well, that's how I interpreted, Black people being a myth. Um, and so it is a challenge. Like, what does it really mean? What does my Blackness really mean? What does it mean to be Black? And some people, you know, don't want to call themselves that. There's others that don't want to call themselves African American. So it's a really interesting search, to try to find your identity, when you are Black.
Yeah. Yeah, I got the same meaning out of that. I think that you did that. Um, you know, we were brought over here, you know, from Africa and given this, you know, have this identity projected onto us, and so that is not who we really are, you know.
Right.
And getting connected to, you know, the as you said, the motherland and our history is so important.
Absolutely. Mm.
Has looking at Afrofuturism taken you back to look at your history and the history of Africa? And what have you discovered?
So, yes. So in my direct family lineage, it did cause me to want to learn more about my great grandparents. And so I discovered, well, I knew that my great grandparents, were part of this small town called Stringtown in Texas. Stringtown. So they called it Stringtown because of the line of houses that were built. But when I dug more into that history, and it dawned on me that, okay, emancipation on paper happened 1865, um, and maybe a little bit later in Texas. So my great great grandparents, or maybe three back, but they started this town in the early 1900s. My great grandmother and my grandmother born into this town. And this town had homes and church and commerce. You know, it was a thriving area, just like many others, little settlements that happened after that time. And so what dawned on me was this idea of how much knowledge they had. Like you built a whole town mere 30 years after, or 40 years after being emancipated. There was a whole town thriving, and they did for themselves. And they took care of each other. And so I thought that there must be some kind of stored knowledge. And this is just me and my sci-fi mind, that I feel like that is, transmigrational DNA or something, that they knew what to do. Oh, and that's, we can argue that, not everybody was as I don't want to say lucky, but to build a town, some stayed behind on plantations. But there must have been some prior knowledge that was just kind of stored in people, that they knew, even when they came here to America. Like, they knew how to farm, they knew how to do certain things, and that's didn't leave them when they were emancipated. How do you learn if you come from, enslaved Africans? How do you learn so many of these skills if it not be, you know, stored somewhere? So I found that interesting. That made me kind of go back further. To luckily I had a cousin who did his ancestry and let us, on my grandmother's side, I believe, uh, on my mother's side, um, to let us know that he has tracked his lineage to the Ivory Coast. And so, that made sense. And so, yeah, that makes me want to know more about the cultures that exist on the Ivory Coast, their values and beliefs. It makes me want to learn more about even their faith. I grew up in the in the Pentecostal church, and Afrofuturism also challenges me to look at to expand that knowledge as well.
Mm.
What do we believe prior to enslavement and invasions? It must have been something sustainable. There's civilizations that have existed for thousands of years. And I'm just curious. I want to know, what do people believe in that they would attempt to build things, irrigation systems and pyramids and whole sanitation systems, and first universities of the world. I want to know, you know, how did those ideas come about?
Mm.
Very fascinated by Mali and Timbuktu and all of that history. So yeah.
Yeah, here as well, fascinated completely by the music of Mali,
Mm.
with the griot, the storytellers who passed down the information, the great library of Timbuktu.
Mm.
And I feel that the more I look into the future and the imagination and the creativity, I go and study the past and the ancient empires of Africa.
Mhm.
And I grew up most of my life oblivious to the extraordinary, the remarkable, the incredible of what was created. And I think you said earlier about giving yourself confidence, knowing that
Mm.
kind of instills a confidence in you. Did it instill confidence in you as well?
Absolutely. I do use this information to dispel myths. For my elementary students that take my Intro to Afrofuturism class. Um, well, first of all, the elementary students are a little bit different um, in their concept of themselves, and I was made aware of that because I asked them a question. Has anyone ever um, made fun of you because of the way your hair looks or the way that your skin looks? And they're like, no. So I know that that confidence is being put into them, which encouraged me because this is not work that I had to, to unpack for them. They're like, mm-mm, my hair is this, like they have that, kind of
Yeah.
attitude already, and I'm like, okay, let's move on then. So this dispelling of myths, I use, things that people say. People say Black people aren't so smart. Okay, let's prove them wrong. And this, so that's where I put in, you know, that Black people had the first university, or and we talk about Timbuktu, and um, we talk about Mansa Musa and all these people that were innovators and scientists, So then I just, how can that be? How can that be that we aren't intelligent people? And they're like, yeah, you know. And so I have them affirm themselves. Then, you know, I want you to write who you are, you know, and I am, they have all the adjectives, and we just clap for them and affirm them in that, you know, that's right. That's exactly who you are. So I hope as they continue, that they will get that affirmation, from others. But I think we're like kind of guarding them from what's to come.
Hmm.
That their notion of themselves is going to be challenged at some point. And so I feel like we have to give them extra in the beginning, you know, and we have to check on them, at 10 and 11, as you said, to make sure, that confidence is still in them. Because there's some rough years ahead, you know. So a lot of proving with history, a lot of affirmations, a lot of opportunities to show their interests, you know. Um, yeah, I think that's how we build the confidence.
I read something you wrote on your page.
Mm.
I think it was something. I think it was parents wanting empathy to be taught in schools,
Hmm.
and you said something. You wrote something. It takes a community to work together. Could you expand on that, please?
Yes, I found that interesting. I saw that on the news. Um, some statistic, a number of sampled parents that wanted the school to teach empathy, and it made me kind of question, you know, where that responsibility should lie. Um, so um, it has to be both. I don't think it's a either or situation. It's a both and. You know, I feel that the order, if there has to be an order, if that's a parents, cultivating, that the school would back up. Um, there's too many varied personalities on a school campus to ensure that you will get all of your empathy learning, on the campus. But I do believe it could be part of a school culture,
Mhm.
you know, that students would be challenged, or held to a certain standard of empathy. If that's in the design of, the signage, the messaging, the activities. There's just kind of this, this culture this is what we do here. We show empathy towards others. It's something you have to practice. You can't just teach lessons and then, you know you are now dawned with empathy.
Yeah.
So it is a practice. I like to teach about emotional intelligence, as a concept, and but I know that they have to put that into practice. So
Mhm.
sometimes I would show them controversial things or opinions,
Mhm.
that they would have a reaction to it. And then I would say, okay, now I want you to put your emotional intelligence glasses on and view this again. Um, what might this person be feeling that made them say that?
Mhm.
So it takes work. And yes, a community, and in the community, helping the students practice their empathy, like we all are better for that. You know, the teachers have more empathy for students and parents have more empathy for teachers, and like we all get to practice. Yeah.
So, so we talked a little bit about uh, helping to cultivate the confidence in the kids and get them to the point where they can use their imagination and engage in future thinking. So, how important do you feel like Afrofuturism and is to creating a better world? Using your imagination and to maybe manifest or create something better than we are living in now.
Mm. Hmm. Hmm. So So Afrofuturism, of course, has a lens of African history. There's other, speculative fiction genres for other cultures that would have the same impact. I think that um, for all cultures that have been um, void of their connection to history, this speculative fiction gives you an opportunity, to connect back with that, so that you can understand who you are, have a strong identity, and then that um, allows you to ask these questions. It's like a clearing
Mm.
of the mind. Like I'm not who they say I am. I actually do have a purpose here. And I would like that purpose to be fulfilled in the future. So now I have to make different decisions, because I see myself differently. So now I can imagine, okay, if I want, I really want to be a doctor, for example. Okay, what do I need? Maybe I need to sit and I need to visualize myself in that space, and visualize myself as that doctor, and who am I serving? You know, these are all kind of like thinking activities I might
Mhm.
do. Okay, let's work backwards. Okay, well, how do I get there? How do what education do I need to get there? What changes in the present do I need to change in order to get to the college? So it's like backwards planning. Um, so I think that is of huge importance. We're talking about oppressed people, you know, and I feel that the amount of systems that are in place that profit off of oppressed people
Mm.
is a challenge to our this is a challenge to our liberation. But um, so in that way, using your imagination as a person of color, you are being defiant, I would say, to those systems. And to me, then there's no greater way to dismantle some of those things than to have that confidence enough to say, I can do it, I can, and I will, and to start to future plan,
Yeah.
you know, um, and then in general for everybody, these are ways in which we can problem solve as people that exist on the same planet.
Mm.
You know, we keep, you know, going in circles about certain things and being satisfied and comfortable, but what if we really came together and put our minds together to address the root causes of things,
Yeah.
you know, then we perhaps can, make some real progress, Um, it's hard because I believe that certain systems exist for a reason. Like a thing keeps happening because it's supposed to, you know. Be like it somebody's profiting off of this model.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's really hard, but I think that we are capable. Like if we understand that, we come from people who all of us come from people who started, you know, or created things from nothing,
Mm.
like or a phenomenon happened in the world in different places, and humans reinvented or they fixed it.
Mm.
Wars and famines and disease wiped out people all over the place, and then someone thinks of some other way of doing things,
Mm.
you know. And so I just believe in human creativity, basically.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The thought that keeps coming up for me is um, getting out of the world, and the world that we are in now, that we've been indoctrinated into, and it's not like we have to get in a spaceship and go to go to some other planet, but it can happen right now. Like each person, can change their world, and yeah, it's really amazing, and we can learn so much from each other. So
Hmm.
there's by bringing the different lessons and culture, from different places, and the lessons from our ancestors, we can perhaps solve some of the issues that we're having now with the environment. And I mean, there's so many issues that can be addressed differently in new ways.
Absolutely. There's a whole, indigenous wisdom that we're just barely tapping into.
Mm.
You know, how could how could we have all the answers in our modern context when it's such a limited part of time, of history? Like, how long has United States, for example, been a thing? you know,
Mhm.
um, in comparison to the history of the world, we are babies. We're toddlers in the in the timeline.
Yeah.
You know.
And you see that the knowledge of the indigenous communities around the world, which is 10 to 80,000 years of age,
Mm,
and their study of the stars, their knowledge of the universe, their knowledge of cultivating seed and
mm,
understanding rain and sun, understanding the nature of, just their ideas of thinking about the universe and giving the stars names.
mm.
I guess even that is Afrofuturism in its essence as well, because you're looking at what is and you're going back, but it's taking you forward into possibilities,
Mm,
which I think is kind of the magic of Afrofuturism. It takes you in two directions at the same time.
mhm, mhm.
And
Yeah,
but also you're fully present in this awareness of who you are at the same time, which is quite remarkable.
absolutely. Yeah, that's the Sankofa concept, and the bird symbol. It's the bird flies forward, but it looks backwards. And in some depictions, it holds an egg in its mouth. And so, I was challenging my students to think about that. Like, why? Like, they understand the flying forward and looking back thing, but the egg in its mouth. I was like, why would a Sankofa bird hold an egg in its mouth and not its you know talons? Or um, and so they went back and forth about it, and oh well, an egg, it's like hatching and its birth. Okay, good, but why does it hold it in its mouth? And so they're thinking and thinking, and I'm like, what do you do with your mouth? you know? They're like, we eat. And what else do you do? What are we doing right now? Oh, we're talking. Ah, okay. So if this egg represents birth and the mouth is communication, what is it trying to tell us? And so we get to the point of speaking things into existence, having the
Mm.
confidence to say I am, you know and I feel like when you when you get to that point where you can say, I am this, or I want this, then, whatever your belief systems say, start to construct opportunities for you to meet those things that you said you wanted, you know? So this was recently kind of tested in my own life because, Afrofuturism is a very heavy genre and it's mostly taught on the collegiate level, and it's very, very intelligent people who are, asking me, questions and things. And I'm like, hey, I just got started, but, and I'm trying to break it down to the level to get to the younger ones anyways.
Mhm.
So I call it Afrofuturism Discovery Academy because I too am on that. I'm in that discovery mode also. So anyways, now I forgot where I was going with my point. What was I talking about?
Speaking things into existence, like being able to say, I am, I want, and
Yes. Okay. So, recently I came across a term in the African American psychology book. It's called ethnic and racial identity. And so when I was reading the definition and what the theory says happens when you have a strong ERI, I was like, this is what I've been talking about. This understanding of oneself through a historical lens or through values. It 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 does what this book said it does. It gives stronger confidence. It helps students to build their academic progress. It gives them a greater sense of belonging. And it's like, okay, this is the thing. And then I know that if I start to talk about this, people, where's your proof and your evidence and your cites, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how can I? I'm not going to go back to college anytime soon. How can I synthesize all of this very heavy research? I need help, I said. When I tell you, maybe like a week later, I get connected to through a contract that I have. I get connected to this professor at Stanford, and guess what the name of the class is? Understanding ethnic and racial identity. And so now I'm partnering with these students who are like, scholars, PhDs, and they're doing the research part. They want to know, how can they help me? Like, oh wow, this is just divine timing.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to be working with those students, and I can't wait to see what they compile, and so that we can really prove this point that we need Afrofuturism and other speculative genres to be included in curriculum.
Do you think something when we are on this path that consciousness forces people together who are going in the same direction? So you then have chance meetings, chance discoveries, a book that seems to fall off the shelf in front of you, which seems to be the very book that you've been looking for. Have you had other occasions where this has happened?
I'm scanning. The first thing that came to my mind was the movie Wiz, because this is a movie like I've seen so many times, especially as a younger person. But then one time I watched it, this was maybe a few years ago, and it was like like a light bulb went off, and I saw the whole thing differently. These the scenes and the even it appeared to me as Afrofuturistic. Like I didn't call it that, but I'm like, whoa, like this is actually kind of sci-fi in a way. We're traveling to a different world, you know, um, where there's certain things aren't happening, and these um, there's these characters that are exploring, and I don't know. It just that was just the first thing that came to my mind. That I just sometimes view things, suddenly differently. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes a book that you've read or a film that you've watched, one day you watch it and you're seeing it with just completely different eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Adi and I use it. We're seen behind the curtain. So it's a good metaphor. They use the whiz there.
Yes.
And and that's really amazing when it's happened. And that's why sometimes you can get a great book, you read it and you read at different stages in your life, and it can feel like it's a completely different book, but now you're seeing it from a completely new perspective.
Absolutely.
Hmm. What changes have you noticed in your students?
So the elementary students, they a lot of them, as I said, kind of have some foundational confidence, and I think we've talked about kind of how that is easier in the younger years, and so I I love their I just love the expansion of that confidence, like that. I love their excitement that they can't wait to tell you what they've discovered. Like, oh, you like, did you know? I'm like, mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I love that when they make connections to something that they learned, and they put it into their own words, and oh, this is like when I do blah blah blah. Yeah, I just I love that they're able to find that voice
Mm-hmm.
to talk about themselves in that way. And with the high school kids, um, it's slower to happen, but oftentimes when I've taught in like a sci-fi unit, you know, is my freshmen, um, they laugh a lot when they're uncomfortable. I don't let that bother me, but sooner or later, you know, it's like you see a little glimpse of the child again.
Yeah.
You know, what I mean? And they are enjoying themselves, and they're asking more questions. Um, those I encourage those that love to draw, and they're just like drawing everywhere. you know so all on their papers and things, or they're asking me when's the next creative project. So I I love those moments too. I had a student, um and so the project was to kind of create this narrative, this story. And so some people used an online program to do it, and some people did it by hand, and they were drawing pictures. And this young man, he's like, "Okay, Miss Bryant, I got a crazy idea." I was like, "Let me have it."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I'm gonna get a box, and I'm gonna make like a panorama thing in the box, and I'm gonna put lights in it, and these pictures, and you're gonna turn the box." Like he's just, like lighting up, telling me his idea. He's like, "You think I could do that?" I said, "Go for it." So he's over there like sawing away, and his peers are like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "No, let him do what he's gonna do." And it just he was like so proud of himself when he finished. I was just like, one of my highlights of the year was just,
Mm,
um, you know, his passion to get this thing finished in the way that
yeah.
he wanted to do it. So, and then I also teach juniors. It's different when you get to 11th grade. You're a little more mature and you're more apathetic. So it takes it's a silence that happens with them sometimes that, like, I feel like they're processing when we're dealing with certain sci-fi or certain stories or themes, dystopians and things of that nature, and like that's one part of speculative fiction that they are more easily connected to is dystopian literature. Um, but um, but I try not to let them sit in that, you know that too long, and
Mhm.
like challenge them to think of what do we need to do to um to prevent these sort of, things from happening as presented in the text. And I think that that critical thinking they latch onto, that kind of problem solving. um I think some of them have, and in doing that work, some of them have told me, like, like they appreciated that, or they really enjoyed that, and they were able to make connections maybe to careers that they wanted to pursue, and that made me really happy. So yeah.
Mm.
How do we encourage these what are called crazy ideas, in adults as well?
Hmm.
Lots of us are out there. We dreamt of creating something in whatever medium, and we put it to the back.
Hmm.
What advice would you give to those who've had something there that may be dormant for 10, 20 years, or it's in our computer or in a box on the drawer under our bed? Or what advice would you give to someone?
Yes, I have those things as well. um I think that a belief in oneself is important. Like, if 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 nothing else, if I fail at this thing that I want to do, like, I understand, that I'm going to land somewhere. I'm going to be okay. It's going to hurt that I failed, but I'm going to be okay because I've kind of established uh, maybe different areas different ways that I could, like, earn an income. Oftentimes I feel like it boils down to money. Like, I don't want to take a risk. I don't want to lose, this position, or change my position, or do this thing because I'm afraid of losing my income,
Mhm.
and my stability. And that is a huge worry, and I really can't speak to the total stress of that as a person, that's, you know, single without children. Like, I am able to take a little more risk, I think. I took a big risk leaving the classroom. You know, I income gone, health benefits gone, you know. But the deciding factor for me was really, I don't I don't want to waste any more time, trying to find my place.
Mm.
Um, I had this idea to start something with Afrofuturism. And I started, while I was full time teaching, but just a little bit. You know, I started to journal, and I had wrote, "What if?" and I asked myself, what is the biggest dream thing that you can think of right now. And I have a spiritual belief that the biggest thing that I can think of is able to be greater than that.
Mm.
Able to grow greater than that. So, what is the biggest thing that I can think of right now? And I dreamt of a building, of an academy, a real academy, a school, and certain educator friends of mine are there running it with me, and we're making real impacts and progress in the community. So again, I do the backwards planning. Okay, well, clearly I'm not going to be able to get that right away. So what is it that I can do today? You know, and I just started to talk to people about the idea, and I think that's important too, is to have a little network of people that can listen, and not shoot your ideas down. Like,
Mm.
some people are dream killers.
Mm.
You know not to go to those people to tell your dreams to.
Yeah.
I need to be connected with some like-minded people that when I say a thing, they get it, And so I've been blessed to have those people in my network, who are also dreamers. This logo right here comes from that because told a friend of mine, this is what I want to do. Mm, And at the time, I had my LLC as the main thing, and he was like, "It sounds like you need to focus on Afrofuturism. That's what you're doing, right?" He's like, "That needs to be the thing that you put up front.
Mm.
Let's get you a logo." Boom, he made it. And that, eh, and I've told him this. He's probably listening right now, so I'm gonna say it again. That act of um, pouring into me ignited me to want to do more. It's something about a logo that makes you feel like official.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just that one little thing, it inspired me, and before I knew it, I had created 2 courses and was teaching this thing in the summertime, and I had a website, and you know like my momentum was there. So I feel like, to answer your question, um, it starts with a question. Like, what is it that I want? What if? you know, and then we backwards plan, and then we get connected to some like-minded people. Or I'm on a journal. I want to make a plan. I just want to kind of mind dump sometimes,
Mm.
um, and see what comes out of that. And find somebody who's willing to give you a little push. Sometimes you just need a little push or some assurance. Like, I got you. You know, so yes, that would be my advice.
It's also the power of, when you do that, you don't have to say a word. People who see it and connect with it are totally inspired as well. And you may not even know them, and
Mhm.
you may never even meet them.
Mm-hmm.
But just so sometimes I think when we embark on these ventures that we're on, yes, we ask the question, what can I do? But there's something greater that happens when you go onto that journey,
Mm.
of the other people who are affected in the community. And this community may not always be of friends. It's a community, I think, sometimes of energy, of connectedness, of like-minded ideas that go off in lots of different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And that really goes into how extraordinary then we are. I don't know what the quote is. Who are we then to think small?
Mm.
Mm.
Maybe it's in us to think larger than we ever imagined.
Yes, I think that's Marianne Williams or something like that, because I remember that quote is I had a college professor that sent that to me because I was playing small and uh, being afraid to get on a stage and sing, and he sent that to me like as a kind of a way to wake me up, and it did. Like, who are we to play small like this? It's almost kind of like offensive. Like, how dare you? You know, when your act of stepping forward can spread and inspire so many to do the same, and then like as you're saying, you're having a whole community like ignited,
Yeah.
and that was that really challenged me to consider, and I'm not perfect at it yet, but to consider um having courage, because or considering this as like a responsibility, like a job almost.
Mm.
I had a vocal coach too that put that in me, like, when you get on that stage, it's your job to do blah blah blah. And then I was like, oh, well, you actually put it in the perfect way for me to understand it. As a person whose father like drilled work ethic, into me. I'm like, I have okay job. I'm going to do it great. So, but I appreciated, those moments, and I'll always remember that and go back to that. When I feel like I cannot or I don't want to,
Mm.
you know, that I'm. It's not for me. All it's not all for me. Those steps that I make, that those risks that I take are not just for me. You know. Yeah.
Mm. I think because we grow up sometimes in this belief of separation. So even right now, somebody listening to what you just said, it triggers things in people, and it opens them up. There was an incident I saw many years ago, and it was this guy. He was doing the calligraphy with water on the pavement with a mop,
Mm.
and he did it so beautifully, and it stayed with me now for 25 years.
Mm.
He's got no idea who I am. He's never probably even saw me. But what he did affected me at such a deep level that I've repeated this story many times. This is that those who are watching, you can open their eyes to something.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
Where do you see in your greatest imagination Afrofuturism in education and learning being in 30, 40 years?
Hmm. Um, I see it as part of a standard curriculum through K-12, um, perhaps an elective course in high school. Um, I feel that it could be, what we have here, AP course, and something that uh, historically underrepresented students could take to to kind of fill that gap of, you know, um, honors classes. There's a we are lacking in those courses, especially in high school. But something where they could be challenged and um, fulfill those kind of AP requirements uh, through that genre. That would be awesome. College. There are college courses that already exist, but ultimately, I think that the academy needs to be an actual academy. it needs to be a place that exists in multiple locations, and it could be a hub for learning and innovation.
Mm.
So I imagine spaces where collaboration can happen, and other rooms with all kinds of crafts and whiteboards where people can do design thinking, and print shops and media centers, and all the things that can people can come to and just create,
Mm.
you know but also spaces to learn that history as well. So yeah, that's as far as I could think so far.
Can you have a learning mathematics by with John Coltrane as a teacher, and using jazz as the way to go into maths and science?
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds awesome. I feel like I would probably have done better in math if had it been pitched that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have a George Clinton elective where we're going to create the spaceship, and we understand the science and the moons and the universe, and understand the black holes, and that's going to be something it's going to be in the academy, our everyday conversation, how we're going to create this. And going back to the smaller, where we're looking at the beauty of just a simple avocado or mango, and the mathematics and science that evolved and how that came about. I'm coming to your academy.
Yeah, me too.
That is awesome. Yes. I at the Family Collective last Saturday, I taught the young people about George Washington Carver and the peanut plant. And this was another thing. I'm sure somewhere in elementary, I don't know actually if I've been taught the George Washington Carver story and about this peanut plant, but now it's amazing. It is, just the way the peanut plant grew was inspiring, or grows is inspiring to me. That the peanuts grow underground, and they sprout roots to produce other peanuts, and there's these kind of beautiful flowers on the top of it. But just the fact that these things are cultivated in the soil, as many of the plants and vegetables are. But I just didn't know that. And in the description that I read, it said that peanuts have a peculiar um, way of ripening underground. And I was like, I like that.
Yeah.
As a metaphor, um, I feel like those of us who are coming into knowledge of self are like that peanut, ripening underground. We are, kind of, in a way, shrinking into ourselves, and learning things that aren't available, eh, to everyone readily, and so you do have to kind of go underground, to learn more about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we're going back into the darkness of space, or into the womb to be reborn again.
Mm-hmm.
And also for your academy, what if we have branches in the US and also in London and also around the world, and we can all communicate via Kiswahili?
Yes. I think that connecting the diaspora again, is going to be huge. I'm in talks with someone about, kind of an exchange program between some African students and some African American students. And there's so much that we need to learn about each other, because both have been miseducated, about each other. And I think purposely so, that we have been, unplugged from each other. And here in the United States, we are in this competing concept of individualism, and those who come from collectivist societies seem to always kind of be, at war. We don't know it, but we battle with some of the standards of, or the conditionings of, individualism. Like that's not really who we are. We're supposed to be connected. I don't even think that Europeans are supposed to be like that. They're disconnected from their ancestry too. Put all of them into one box and given this one identity. And so what a huge disservice that this concept alone does to all of us. Like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, your own, all of these things that we're told you got to do it yourself. When that's not how we've functioned, historically in any culture, really.
Yeah. It breeds the power, domination, competition, rather than unity, cooperation, compassion.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's put us into, I'm only worried about me and mine's, instead of looking at us as a collective, as a global family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to see how wide this global family is, I had the great opportunity to visit Australia, and I met some of the First Nations elders from there. Whenever I walked down the streets in Australia and a First Nations person saw me, hi brother, hi brother, hi brother. So I had the fortune to speak to an elder, and it was one of the most incredible conversations I had. She talked to me about the trees and how the signs on the trees and how the birds fly and the sky. And there's this vast knowledge out there that we can tap into if we open our eyes and learn from each other. And I think maybe we're just at the beginning of going back to go forward.
Yes. I would agree. But just barely understanding that we need to travel. That these things that we've been taught in these systems, aren't quite producing the fruits that we really want. So we are in search.
And how remarkable it is then, if we look at all the injustices and systems that are placed against us, to what we've achieved in spite of it. So what could happen if our creativity was really fostered, was really nurtured, was really cared for? I think it's beyond that, even our imaginations to conceive of what could happen if we're fully supported and we didn't have to this trauma that we have to get into, but raise children without this trauma, and what could happen. I think what you said about having that imagination and that creativity and the what if, because the what if is an open question, isn't it?
Yes. Absolutely. And I feel that a lot of our environments are constructed to limit imagination. I thought about ghettos, for example. As the original reason that they were created, and then when they were created here in the United States, These are places void of imagination and centered on survival.
Mm.
You know, and so when your mind is on survival, it's hard to imagine. You know, I just need to get through today. Is kind of the thing. You
Yeah.
know, we used to hear young people, or sometimes you'll hear hip hop artists say, "I didn't think I would live to 25." You're like, that's a real thing. Like, people can't imagine themselves past a certain age. We have a huge problem. You know, I can't I can't even conceptualize a future for myself. And so then I'm not going to make certain decisions in the, today, if I can't conceptualize a future for myself. I don't care. I don't care today. I'm just gonna get through the best I know how.
Mm.
And so I feel like environment plays a part in cultivating imagination as well. Like, the constructions of these places, the high rises and the walls, no grass and parks. You know what I mean? Like, it is to purposely extract imagination. Like, this is, and to convince people that this is where you belong.
Yeah.
This is all that it will ever be for you. And so you internalize that, and you don't move. You don't, try to scale that wall and see what exists on the other side. You know, it's so I feel, in places such as that, like, we have to be intentional about, dropping hope into those places. You know, that's why people make murals, and they start, growing trees and clearing brush to make playgrounds and things like that. All of these things, I feel, inspire hope in those
Mm.
dark places.
Yeah, and I think we seem to take on a certain loyalty to some of the environment.
Mm.
It becomes part of us, and we feel like we're just like family. You have certain family beliefs and conditioning that is obviously very toxic, but you feel a certain loyalty, like this is just how we are, this is just how it is, this is just how we do things. And
Yeah.
then even in the society, our traditions and things, that I think Dr. Gabor Mate says it very well. We're a society, a culture that has made the unnatural natural.
Mm.
So we live in such a unnatural way, but and we celebrate it. Actually,
Mhm.
we actually celebrate the toxic behavior and things that we do, and have gotten so disconnected from the natural way of being. And yeah, we don't like venture to look over that wall, because, as you said, it becomes so much about survival, you know so much about survival, and not really living, or even feeling like um that you don't even deserve anything better, you
Yeah.
know that you don't even deserve to exist. You're just like, don't want to be seen, and kind of like hide in behind, like, I'm in this place, and I don't want to be found out, because you were put in that place, you know, and made not to be seen. And so, you have that belief system there. So it's really, it can feel really difficult to venture out of that. And I've heard even people that have, like you mentioned, rappers that have, you know been successful in their own right and have fulfilled some of their dreams, but they still go back to the same lifestyle, still doing some of the same things, and then getting into trouble, and some of them getting killed and things of this nature. It really kind of sticks with you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's that. That conditioning is hard to rid yourself of, and that's why I think it's so important to expose young people to, the varied parts of identity,
Mm,
and to challenge them to, like who taught you that? Who told you, that you were supposed to do this, or black people do this, like just again with the questions,
yeah,
how did you know that? Like just to constantly kind of confront, their beliefs, especially, as they get older,
Mm.
when, developmentally they're trying to forge, their identities, and they're kind of like grasping for things, and if you don't intervene, you know, they'll do what's easiest. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
yeah.
What's easiest is what's on TV and film and
Mm.
in the music.
Mm,
That's what's easiest because it's ever present, Um, and like so then and then we have to grapple with like, okay, if I decide that I would like to be different than the status quo or the norm here, like how do I position myself? Because you're gonna get teased, you
mm,
know, or oh, you think you're better than us, and all these kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
things, that now you have to fight that other pressure inside of your own community. People who you think would cheer you on sometimes don't. And so ever the more reason to strengthen one's identity. This is challenging. To be, a critical thinker, to want to pursue higher education, to want to solve problems, or be the first in your family to do a thing, you are up for a challenge. You know,
yeah,
just through society, like showing up in places and you are the only person of color. That's happened to me lots of times. You know, and also being a woman, I go in spaces and I'm the only one for both reasons, you know. Um, but and now I'm thinking about, well, what was I given, as a child that would, that I was unbothered. It bothers me, but it doesn't stop me,
yeah,
in those spaces, and you know, it's in what my parents gave me. They gave me standards, and
mm,
they told me what they expected from me. Like my dad still is like, "What about that master's degree, though?" I kept
yeah,
like, Dad, geez, like I started a whole company here. Give me a So but that standard he keeps, even at this age, and so it's in my mind, you
mm,
know, and so I think for me, a combination of those standards um, and a village of people who, certain I can pinpoint certain times in my life where someone has, offered me an opportunity. You know, there was a lady that came to the high school and she had her own TV show, a community TV show, and she offered me an opportunity, and I took it.
mm,
And so that would be my advice, really, to young people, because I see it often where they're presented with an opportunity and they're afraid
yeah,
to take it. And I just keep trying to tell them, you you take those opportunities and you run with it, because you never know, where it will lead you. You know, these people that are offering you something are also going to offer you the support. Like they wouldn't offer you a thing and like say, okay, good luck with that. They're offering it to you because they want to cultivate something in you. So take that.
Mm.
And that's what I did with the lady in high school, and it sparked in me a love for film and TV production. And then there I go to college pursuing that as my first major, you know? And so I still have a love then for creation and, in production in general. But yeah, just taking we need people who, on the other end, for us that are adults in a position to do so, we need you to go into places and to offer opportunities, to young people. If it's a shoulder, even,
Yeah.
or a job shadowing, you know, mentorship. Like we need young people to be exposed to different things. Like
Mhm.
they don't know what's available to them until you show them. You know.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when young people are given that opportunity, they have had so many disappointments throughout their life that there sometimes is this fear of failure or another disappointment. So it's like doing what's I'll stick with what's more comfortable. I at least I know this portion of suffering that's called my life. I'm used to it. It's part of that survival thing. I remember when I was young, my mom, there was this program where they shipped me and my cousin, because we grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in like 70s, 80s. It was a really bad neighborhood back then, and they had this program where they shipped the inner city kids upstate to this camp to experience nature. And like right when we got there, it's beautiful nature, trees, and everything. And all we could think about is we wanted to go back. We wanted to go back home. We didn't want to be there. And then we started trying to find ways to manipulate things and to just the old behaviors that we were doing in the city. We started doing those same things, not listening to anybody, and just didn't take advantage. There were some people I think that probably did. My brother was really like that. He would think out of the box. You know, he went to the what is it called, the Boy Scout, and he would go on trips and do all these things, and so he kind of was more expansive in that way. So it took me a long time to get out of that. I was really holding on to this identity that you have to be very stoic and don't show your emotions and be hard and all of that stuff. Completely opposite of who I am now, but there's still some of those fears and feelings of not deserving and all of that. There's still remnants of that just kind of sticks with me. So yeah, I mean, it's like a lifelong process. It feels like.
Yeah, it is. It is. I struggle with, you know, imposter syndrome and
Yeah,
I deserve to be here and do this thing. And yeah, those are the remnants of,
yeah,
of those early experiences. Absolutely. But you speak to kind of the idea of, you know, even if we don't see the change then in the young person, that the seed had been planted.
mm,
You still experienced that thing and it stuck with you. and that thing grows and it latches onto another thing, and it whittles away, and you change with time.
Yeah.
And as an educator, sometimes we want to see, the the fruit of our labor, within the 4 years that we see the kid, or even in the 1 year. That doesn't happen often.
Mm.
you know, um, sometimes it takes some years, and we get a chance to see the kid as 19 and 20 21 years old, and like, okay, you turned out okay, you're on the right path now. you know um but it's important for us as adults to remember, just to drop the seeds, and to open those opportunities up, for young people. And my therapist told me once that, um, I was kind of explaining how, you know, I really, I really want to see change in young people. You know, um, I want to make an impact, and I want to do all these things to shake them up, and to put them on a different path. And she told me to check my ego. I was like, me? you know, I'm a very humble person, not ego. And how she explained to me was, yes, ego, because you think that you can do all those things for everybody. And I really had to marinate on that, and what she was trying to tell me. Like I struggle with that, because I should have I have a kind of a healthy confidence that I can make an impact. That's a good thing.
Mhm.
Um, but also, the realization that I can't do that. I am I have no cape
Yeah.
in order to do that for everybody that comes into my space. Um, and and also, in trying to kind of rescue people all the time, I deny them the opportunities to fall,
Yeah.
make the mistakes, and those are really the greatest learning opportunities sometimes. So I had to relax.
Yeah. So, well, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. So, perhaps it's a good time to begin to wrap up. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about?
No, I just want to, reiterate the point of, that Afrofuturism and the other speculative genres are really important to challenge, our young people to connect back to their history,
Hmm.
and to start to restore those positive identities in them. And I feel that if we really do care about all of the young people, that we would, as adults, ask the questions, what if?
Yeah.
What if we redesign this in a different way? What if we allowed them to be exposed to to, if that's what we really, want? I'm not convinced yet, actually,
Hmm.
that we really want to solve certain problems. But, those of us who do, to not be afraid to go for it, to design the thing a different way, you know, mash up your classroom or whatever it is that you are thinking about
Hmm.
doing. But as far as this genre goes, I find it a huge opportunity, um, to to give our young people the tools that they need to explore and to expand their, horizons and their identities, so that they can do that future thinking, and be the scholars and the citizens that we say we want them to be.
Yeah. Great. And Where could people reach you if they want to learn more about you or get in touch?
Sure. How can they reach me? So I have an Instagram. So what I put in? Should I put in the chat?
If you say it, and then I will put it in the description of the video. And also, this goes on. I'm going to upload it to YouTube as well, so I'll put it on the description area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my personal Instagram is at Sherinda RB. And then I have the Afrofuturism Discovery Academy is on Instagram. Afrofuturism underscore discovery. So those are my main places to you can kind of keep up with what I'm doing, and I love to collaborate and talk about ways in which we can work together. I'm going to be teaching my 2 courses pretty soon, probably starting next year. Intro to Afrofuturism, and This Is Why I'm Fly, which I really love. That course, we track the flying metaphor from African folklore to hip hop, so it's pretty fun. So I look forward to spreading that soon, and yeah, I just really appreciate this time. This was a very comfortable conversation, and I appreciate that. And I loved your insights as well, and gave me some things to think about. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was a pleasure having you here, and very inspirational for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherinda. Some wonderful pearls, and we've set out in our words and our mind the Worldwide Academy of Afrofuturism.
Yeah,
you did speak it, and it's recorded. So
yes, we've put it out there, and we're going to be speaking Kiswahili, and we're going to be traveling and moving and meeting elders and teachers from all over the world and bringing them into the academy. And we're going to have our own massive garden where we're growing fruits and grass. Yeah, so this academy, I can see it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad it's a shared vision. So when they in church they have the scripture when 2 or more are gathered, for a purpose, So that's inspiring. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.